Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Talk Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie. Good evening, good afternoon, no matter where you are in this beautiful world. We welcome you to Dark Matter Radio, heard in over, I believe it's 13 countries worldwide. Welcoming Mexico, the United States, Canada. We have Colombia, Brazil. We have South America, India. We have Australia. We have British Columbia, that's in Canada too, but we also have the British Isles. We have a whole host of countries all around the world watching and listening to Dark Matter Radio. We do appreciate everything that you do to support the radio station and the channel. So today we have a wonderful show for you. Who are the real Americans? It's time that the world knows the truth. And it is time the world knows the truth. Today we're going to be taking a look at a book. It's called The Primitive Man in Ohio. And this book, written by Warren K. Moorhead in 1892, the book is a comprehensive study of the prehistoric inhabitants of Ohio, focusing on the culture, lifestyle, and artifacts. The author, an archaeologist and anthropologist, provides a detailed account of the excavation of various sites in Ohio, including mounds, burial grounds, and the ancient structures. The book covers the period from the earliest known inhabitants of Ohio, and we're going to get into why that's important in just a little bit, around 10,000 BC and before that date. And the reason why I say before that date is because this book points out so eloquently that the artifacts and bones and stuff that they've been looking into were found well before the ice wall had formed, and before anyone else other than these people were actually on the continent of the Americas. So, to the arrival of the Europeans in the 17th century, right? Author provides and notice what's missing there. To the arrival, it doesn't say the arrival of anyone else, but of the Europeans in the 17th century. So we're missing a great deal of the situation of the Mongolians, Asian type population that was supposed to be here before everybody else. The author provides a detailed analysis of tools, weapons, pottery, and artifacts discovered at these sites and discusses their significance in understanding the lives of prehistoric. Now, when it always talks about people of the Americas, or people looking primitive, they always say prehistoric people, right? Who created them? This book also includes a numerous illustration of photographers and of the artifacts and structures discussed on the text. In other words, they have receipts, as people are calling them now. Overall, Primitive Man in Ohio. Overall, Primitive Man in Ohio is an important work in the field of archaeology and provides valuable insight into the prehistoric Ohio and wider regions of the Americas. This Sacrifice Antiquarian book is a facsimile reprint of an old original and may contain some misimperfections such as library marks and notations. In other words, it was duplicated from the real thing. So the original print is out of print, but you can actually get the real print of the book in duplication. Because we believe this work is culturally important, we have made it available as a part of our commitment for protecting, preserving, and promoting the world's literature in an affordable, high-quality, modern editions that are true to their original work. And original work is very important when you're talking about the primitive man in Ohio, written in 1892. Was that the actual, the beginning book? Let's take a look. I guess so. 1892 is when this book was written. There were other books that were written earlier, but we're not going to get into that right now. But this book really gets into a lot of different things. I mean, when we take a look at the Americas, and when we take a look at all of the different sites, which include castles, pyramids, of the like, we're looking at, real serious castles, star forts. We're looking at navigational ways, rivers, lakes, all kinds of different things that are here in the Americas that people pretty much don't really take a look at, especially a lot of the castles, and also when you take a look at the not only the thousands upon thousands of mounds that were all over the place, but you look at the pyramids. The Americas has the oldest pyramids on the face of the earth. Also the largest base pyramids in the Americas as well. And we have, I'm going to say, probably more castles in the Americas that have been discarded, founded, and still occupied than anywhere on the face of the earth as well. Very interesting that they don't even really talk about these things, and these things, these castles and pyramids, are also thousands and thousands of years old as well. So we have a lot of stuff. I mean, one of the we'll talk about, Cahokia, Itwa, the Boyd Mound, Effigy Mounds National Park, the Serpent Mound, that's also in Ohio, Piston Mound. We have Angel Mounds, Serpio Mounds, and we also have Poverty Point. I've never been to Poverty Point, but been to Cahokia. And Cahokia is one amazing looking place if you haven't been there. Cahokia is named for the tribe that lived near the site in the 19th century CE. And the original name is unknown. It's unknown because they don't really want to tell you the original name. They probably know the original name. And then they try to claim that was only built between 600 and 1350 CE, which was in its use. Cahokia, or the City of the Sun. There you go. The real name's starting to come out. And it was probably named after a dragon or so, because the Americus, Amarahu Khan, is a very, very, very natural name for anything of the Americas. Was situated in the Great American Bottom, where the Illinois and Missouri rivers enter the Mississippi River. And the river's enabled. Cahokia has been an UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1982. So there's no farming there now, but people did gather on the Monk's Mound to watch the 2017 solar eclipse. So still even today, it's very important. When you go there, the mound is huge. I mean, it is just unimaginably huge. And the steps that you have to walk up, right? It's just one beautiful, amazing sight. And when you get up there, you're able to see all around you the many other different mounds that they haven't even began to start protecting. So Cahokia actually, part, I believe St. Louis, the city of St. Louis was part of that, where that arch is, was part of Cahokia, and the whole entire region was a gathering place for people to do much large types of businesses, trade. It was a gathering point. And again, like the story was saying, it's situated at the mouth of the Mississippi River, Missouri and Mississippi River in Illinois. So it is important for us to understand that these mounds, although described, aren't really being described properly in the way that they're supposed to be. Cahokia was a major marketing and market point, industrial point for the real Americans. So it's important for you to get out there, take a look at Cahokia Mound, which is just unbelievably beautiful. When you get into that, also is called Etowah Mound, and the Etowah Mounds were built in 3 stages. So the claim was built in 3 stages, but these three stages probably had something to do with the occupation of who was here in the Americas during the period of the Mississippian culture, and presently 6 of these are extinct, meaning that they blew them apart, took them away. 3 platform mounds, Etowah Mounds, Indian Mound site, historical site. Georgia's archaeologically is famous for its large earthen mounds, and among the best known were the Etowah Mounds. Now, a lot of these mounds, such as the Etowah Mounds, Indian Mounds, Ketersville, Georgia, South Appalachian, Mississippi, Cyrus Thomas, a lot of these people who took a look at these mounds, when you're passing by even just a regular street, you won't even realize that you're passing by mounds. A lot of houses were built on them, neighborhoods are built on them. A lot of them were covered up or just built into the landscape. A lot of them are part of golf courses. You wouldn't even realize that they're around. But these mounds are very, very much sacred, such as the ones in Butts County called the Three Sisters, which is a very significant mound system that we have. And these mounds are all over the place. We have another mound called Boyd Mound, right? The woodland burial mounds can be visited at Boyd Burial in far sites at the Chalawa Lake and Holy Springs National Forest, the Mississippian period. Also known as the Jacksontown Stone Mound, the central stone covered structurally was very large, destroyed by the removal of stones and construction licking. So, again, archaeological site, and for the Mississippian sites is very, 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 very important, because when they talk about mining, and this is probably what happened with this, when they talk about mining, what these people that came over here, what they were actually mining, they were mining our old sites, mining them out of existence, using them and the materials to build some of the materials that they have around now. They couldn't recreate or duplicate the things that we had, such as the what they call natural concrete. And that natural concrete that they were mining, such as this big giant stone or rock that was partially destroyed, they were probably mining that as well. What they were doing with that natural concrete was mining it from under the ground, under the base of the buildings that were here. Now you can look at some of the buildings, such as when you look at the historical pictures of when they were building Washington or renovating Washington, D.C., and some of the Washington historical sites, you see that there's other buildings underneath it, that the buildings are built on top of large buildings, or they're one continuous building, just part of that building or most of that building was buried underneath the ground. So, and what they were doing, those people that were mining, a lot of these mines and stuff like that, they were mining the precious metals or concrete or whatever it is that's coming out of these underground buildings that were covered by mud. They were mining the precious materials from that and then putting it in production, to the point as to where they had to close down the mines and saying that certain natural concrete does not exist anymore. And when they mean that it does not exist anymore, it means that they could not gather or get to the natural concrete that was underneath, or very difficultly exposed for them to be able to take. Right? So that's what a lot of this mining was going on. I mean, they were mining all kinds of star forts and stuff like that. And then we have the effigy mounds located in the upper Mississippi River Valley. Effigy Mounds National Monument comprises over 200 earthen, erected indigenous populations of the Americas. Right? So effigy mound is important. We have the Serpent Mound, which is in Ohio, which is the area that we're talking about now. And the reason why this is important again is because if these people existed one place, they existed all over the place. Serpent Mound is a large earthen mound, one of the most spectacular effigy mounds in the shape of a snake. The tail and thrice called out, which the body, right? So a lot of this you wouldn't even know that was there if you didn't see it from the sky. While historians are still unsure of which culture built the mound, they do know that the serpent itself was not built for burial purposes. The purpose of the serpent mound is not entirely clear, but it was ceremonial. A few years before that, a group of people were caught attempting to plant at the mound, right? So a lot of these mounds, again, a lot of these people, because even the Indians, the Native Americans, they don't know where all this stuff come from because they didn't get here until about the 1800s themselves, right? So the historical record that you're being taught is totally 100% a narrative that was made up to try to write other people inside of the history and to write a certain other people outside of the history. And those other people, we're going to get to who they really are. And who they, when I say they, those that came over here, acknowledge them to be. We have Angel Mound. Angel Mound, even when it's understood that these mounds were significantly paragons of indigenous architecture, landowners still destroy them to prevent the state, or some of these mounds of the period were still built with buried important members of local groups. These burial mounds were rounded dome-shaped structures that generally, to the view of the mounds, is to see a story of people who came together to build something greater than themselves. Effigy Mounds National Monument Park is very important. And again, that's what happened, right? I mean, even Abraham Lincoln mentions that in some of his speeches, especially one of the speeches that were over there in, where was that, Niagara Falls, when he says that these mounds are as apparent as the giants that walked amongst them, as we know today. So what they did when they came over here, they purposely destroyed as much as they can and to get rid of as much as they can, so that way the history of the people that were here could not be known. And this was, again, sanctioned by the doctrine of discovery, or the discovery doctrine, which was led by the Roman Catholic Church, or the Catholic Church as we know it today, and by all of the empires that were fighting against one another. Just because we had these world wars doesn't mean that these people in the worlds weren't following a particular type of mindset or on a certain side. They were fighting amongst themselves, but they were all fighting within the same camp, if that makes sense, right? So who they would all come together to fight would be the people that were indigenous to the land, But as they were fighting for the scraps of the land, they will fight amongst themselves to see who can take control, right? And a lot of that was dictated by the doctrine of discovery, which is the real international law, even still to this day. And the doctrine of discovery is controlled mainly by the Catholic Church and its progenitors that proclaimed the quote-unquote Jesus or Christianity type religions inside of the government. So we also have Poverty Point, Serpio Mound, La Fall County, Oklahoma, right? They said it was in use from 800 to 1200 CE before the Common Era. Or Common Era, it doesn't say B in it. Common Era, so that's 1200, right? 1200 is an interesting year. Interesting year, 1200. We'll get into that right now. But 1200 is an interesting year. So, Caldone, Mississippi culture, also called the Great Mortuary, is the second largest mound located the furthest west of all the mounds. Between 1933 and 1935, looters tunneled into the Great Mortuary and resting place of Serpio, the doers of the Serpian Mound. Well, they say that a lot of these mounds, they prevent a lot of people going in there today, so people won't know what's in there, what's going on with them. And again, a lot of these mounds were purposely destroyed. And then that's one of the reasons why they created this Native American narrative, so that they can give it over to a race of or a group of people that they created and have control over, that wouldn't give away its secrets back to the real people that were actually here and belong here, that they were trying to genocide off the land. And there's a Poison Mound, Poverty Point. We'll look at Poverty Point real quick. Poverty Point takes the name from 19th century plantation of one of Philip Gutters, who farmed the land, and the mounds are all without realizing. The hills where Poverty Point is a pretty ionic name, and enormous mounds complex built by the group of rich people. The names come from plantation used to be located. Poverty Point. Yeah, so that's very interesting. But a lot of these mounds, again, they have really, they know where these mounds, a lot of these people, they know who created these mounds, where these mounds came from. And when you take a look at that, they act like the Americas was just about mounds. And then if you want to get beyond the mounds, there's primitive mounds, whatever, which weren't primitive because they were part of a very serious, diverse ecological system that was here in the Americas, and a part of the pyramidal system, as well as connected to all of the star forts, which were also connected to the great cities, which had monumentous type buildings, which was unbelievable in a sense. And this is the reason why it's very important for us to understand who the real Americans are. Because the reason why they hid a lot of this information is because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know who actually built these castles. They don't want you to know who actually built these star forts and what the star forts were really for. They don't want you to know about all of these real artifacts that were impossible for them to build at the time when they came and they found them. Such as water purification plants up there in Buffalo, such as the real look of what New York City looked like, Chicago looked like, what Detroit looked like, what Boston looked like, right? A lot of these cities were already built out, such as San Francisco, New Orleans. You also have Memphis. A lot of these cities, Manhattan, Kansas, were already built out. And this is just to say a few, because in areas where you would think there was nobody there, they were there. And that's why this book is so important. The Primitive man, Ohio. And I just want to get into this just a little bit because it's very important for us to understand how things really start out. When you start taking a look at their real history, and the books, they make it very difficult for you to get a hold of. It tells a real big truth. And again, this is another book that was set out to prove or set out to get the story straight. And what it says the laborers of professional G. Frederick Wright of the Albany College, Ohio, have been a great importance in connection with the antiquity of man in America. He has traced the great terminal moraine of the northern ice sheets across Pennsylvania, thence across Ohio, Indiana, and as far beyond as the Mississippi, making, besides extensive study of the muir of the other glaciers of Alaska, containing, that's interesting to use muir, M-U-I-R, muir, the Murian, right? And other glaciers of Alaska containing the studies of glacial phenomenon, even so far as the eastern content. He has shown the glacial floods operating while the ice remained over the headwaters of streams, have deposited beds of drift gravel in the valleys of the southern flowing rivers, and calls attention to the similarities of these beds of drifted gravel to those deposited by the ice floods of the Delaware Valley, suggesting that they are carefully examined for evidence of pre-Paleolithic man. Right? Now listen to this. Man was on the continent, says Wright, at the period when the climate and ice of Greenland extended to the north of New York Harbor. The probability is that if he was in New Jersey at the time, he was also upon the banks of the Ohio and extensive terrace of gravel deposits in the southern part of our state should be closely scanned by archaeologists. When observers became familiar with the rude forms of these Paleolithic implants, they will doubtless find them in abundance. But whether we find them or not in the state of Ohio, if you admit, as I am compelled to do, the genius of those found by Dr. Albert, our investigations into the glacial phenomena of Ohio must have an important archaeological significance, for they bear upon the question of the chronology of the glacial period. The chronology of the glacial period. They are putting in question the time frame of when supposed Mongolians, Mongols, came across and settled over here, and upon that of man's appearance in New Jersey. So they're saying that the man's appearance in New Jersey was far beyond any of this glacial disturbance. The prediction that traces the pre-glacial man would be found in trenches and gravel deposits of the southern Ohio was verified. It was verified later on at a meeting of the Boston Society of Natural History, whom held in November of 1885. Now listen to that. They knew this. They knew this long before anything else. It's around this time when they really began pushing another narrative. When the professor Putham displayed a chip implemented of black flint found by Dr. C.I.N.N.A, was discovered 8 feet below the surface. That's pretty deep. At Moorville, Ohio, this is the first announcement of the finding of a Paleolithic in the gravels of Ohio. The town of Mansonville is situated about 11 miles north of Cincinnati, about 5 miles back from the Ohio River, the Little Miami, on the way to Joint, Ohio, passes through the valley of the same name about 3 miles to eastward of Mansonville. The town in depression is between, right? It's between some great stuff. So here, what we're looking at here, and this is in the first chapter, book itself gets into looking at all of these deposits. They go in very, very, very deep detail of all these deposits. And when you get these details, they also go into where they were found and the time period that they were likely found. And what they're showing everyone is that most likely not most likely, what they've proven is that these artifacts, proven that these people that were here long before any of the Mongolians. There. And I implore everyone to try to get this book, because it does go very deeply into who the Mound Builders are. Well, it doesn't go into deeply who the Mound Builders are, but it goes into all the artifacts, right? And it does make very significant statements about what they are, end of the book. And it's very important for us to really understand that aspect, because, when we begin to start looking at a lot of these things, we begin to start understanding that they knew this information long before. The Catholic Church knew this information long before anybody else. They were just keeping it hidden and told anybody, whoever came across this information, don't say anything at all. Just tell people that this, don't tell anybody about what was going on. Just say that this is the New World. And everything in the New World was new discoveries. Remember, back in early forms of my educational period, they used to tell us that the only thing here that was found in America with no writings, because the people couldn't write, there were no buildings, because the people didn't know how to build, and there was no history really left behind, because the people were that ignorant, right? And they were trying to say that all the people were Mongolians, right? So when this group of researchers in this book started looking at the bones that were left behind, and yes, they did find what they call primitive bones, meaning they were the original people that were here, the original people of the Americas that were here. They were looking at all the bones, all the structures, facial structures and everything, and they came across a very significant conclusion. And that conclusion is stated very, very well right here. The skeletons of the branchy, prolific people in the collections exhumed, right, from the Great and Little Miami valleys, and those of the Solstice in Ohio, suggest that they were strong and well built, stature slightly superior to the Dilaphalic people, whoever they are. No skeletons of gigantic size were discovered. All right, so let's get out of it right now that the only people over here of our history were people of gigantic size, right? They were, normal people, right? They were normal people. People of anywhere from the sizes of, I would say, 4'5" all the way up to 6'6", which aren't giants, but just, tall, strong people. Most of the people are anywhere probably from the height of 5'7" to 6 feet, 5'10". And there is but little doubt that the protagonists of the American race were height subject to the same variations in stature which are to be remarked among our recent tribes. Right? So again, there were people of normal height. And what did they call them? No doubt that the progenitors of the American race, they call them the American race. So now we're getting to whoever these people are. They are the original American race, right? Not African American, not Mongolian American, Native Americans. They are the American race, a race subject unto their own. And let's keep reading. In anatomical pre-cultures, these people of the Scotia, Ohio, and Great and Little Miami Valleys closely resemble those of the strong, grave people of Tennessee, and are all, in all probability, but a prolongation of that short-headed stock northward into the localities named. So what they're telling you is they brought up New Jersey. If they were in New Jersey, there most definitely were other people in other parts of the Americas of the same ilk, of the same being, right? The same type people. In some of the large mounds, especially those of Hopewell's earthworks in the Scotia Valley and the mounds of Little Miami Valley, the cornea are remarkable for their great thickness and low, retreating, narrow foreheads with heavily, spectacularly ridges. These at times being replaced by the flat plane similar to that shown in figure whatever. They have a figure. Then those losing itself in the rest of the frontal bone as in mounds towards the partitions, particules, right? The sketch given is a faithful reproduction of the fragment of the corneum now in our possession from the mound number 3. So they actually did what they were not supposed to do, and they can't do it today. They went and dug up these people. Who are these people? They went and dug up the original people. Who are the original people? They went and dug up the people that kind of look like the people who are walking around today. And who are these people today? Well, let's find out. We cannot overlook the fact that this cornea and skeleton examined by us, right? Now, when they say examined by us, again, they dug up the people that were here before all these other people came. And then they found something that was very, very significant. Found is we cannot overlook the fact that the cornea of the skeletons examined by us, many of them excavated by our own hands, approach somewhat the Negro in their anatomical characteristics. They are those of an inferior race with strong meso and breachy prolific affinities, right? So now you know who they're talking about, because anytime that they're trying to run something down because they want to make it lower than they are, and that's the reason why I did that show about, do you want to consider yourself to be human? Understand what a human is. So what happens is that they found these people, then all of a sudden they got shocked because when they were actually looking at the real thing, which again, people's DNA can actually be judged against those people to find out who they really are. found this. None of the characteristics of the Mongolian or Mongoloids we have examined. They are evidently those of a people who a racial type was created and fixed on the American continent. In other words, the American race. In other words, the American race. The American race. So I want this show today to really give you an important understanding of who and what certain racial characteristics that they're trying to put forth on other people and have been trying to put forth on other people a long time. They've known for over 200 years and beyond, because the Catholic Church knew this long before a lot of these other people, because a lot of these other people, one, are just getting into this whole entire thing, and they're just being introduced to a lot of stuff because they weren't allowed to do all this stuff before. Right? They're just getting out of their own captivity. Right? There were more white slaves than there were so-called black slaves. And then the black slaves weren't really black slaves, quote-unquote black slaves. They were Americans that were imprisoned from a war that tried to slaughter them off the planet. And how do we know this? Because the Mongolians weren't even here. None of the characteristics that they themselves examined and exhumed out of the dirt themselves. They didn't go by somebody else's report. This is their report. By themselves, right, found no traces whatsoever of any Mongolian or Mongoloid racial type present in any of the Ohio Archaea which we have exhumed. Now, again, if we're going to expect that in Jersey before all of this 10,000 years ago, before the Ice Age, that these people were here in Jersey and in other places, they assumed that they would be in the Ohio Valley as well as other valleys as well. And what they found was that the assumptions were right. Now, we can assume that if the cornea, the bodies that they actually exhumed from all of these places, and they really didn't tell us where, but they exhumed in the Ohio Valley, possibly out of the mounds themselves, possibly out of all this dirt that was covered over 8 feet. They found a lot of bodies, and all the bodies that they found and that they looked at had nothing to do with anybody from across the pond. And in fact, what they said that the bodies' racial types were so different that they called them Americans. They had to be of the Americus. Americans. It was a racial type unto itself. A racial type unto itself. And so now we know exactly when we begin to start talking about the majority of the people that they reclassified to Negro from American Indian, the American race, to Negro, to black, negro, black, African American, nigger, whatever you want to call them, right, were attempts to cover the fact of the original people and who actually owns the land and who the land was actually taken away from. And when you take away this stuff from these people, you know what that means. That means that there's nobody in the Americas right now who does not fit the description in the bill of what they found and what other archaeologists found, anthropologists found, and what the science of the Catholic Church knows. and what the majority of these people know from all around the country, all around the world. What they know is that no one who is here right now belongs on American soil. Now, my grandmother, as well as many other people who have now been misclassified as African Americans, have always been told that you're an American Indian, not Native American, American Indian, not black, Negro, American Indian, not African American or any other kind of adjective American, American Indian. And what this book is saying, because this book was written to show you who the real Americans really are. Because they felt it was time the world know the truth. And now that we do know the truth, I have to implore that every single person out there calling themselves black or African American stop doing that immediately and just call themselves an American. Doesn't matter to me if you drop the Indian, but call yourself an American. Because that's what you are. You are the Americus, Amarucan, an Amerindian. This is what you are. And this is the reason why, when you get down to it, the right of return is so very important for all of the real Americans to be able to participate in. The churches need to stop pushing this black agenda. The American church, the black American church, which is not the American church, even the black American mosque, the Hebrews, or anybody else, Moors, stop pushing this Pan-African narrative and have an understanding that if you are of Africa, you need to go back to Africa and leave the Americans to the Americans. We need to restore what they have destroyed. And I'm not talking about fighting amongst ourselves, because fighting amongst yourselves would be fighting against another American. We're only trying to do what needs to be done to prevent from happening of us still being in the state of prison of war, such as the Palestinians over there. And the Palestinians, not only a prison of war of what they call a Jewish state, they're a prison of war of the world. No less than what the real Americans are here in the Americus. See how the people over there who are fighting Russia, how they are claiming that they are trying to prevent occupation and they're fighting back. Well, the real Americans have been occupied now for over 500 years. We've been at war for that long. This is a war that has never ended. I gave a show and they said they killed so many American Indians that changed the climate of the planet, and that is the truth. Stands right now, the highest estimates that I got before they came were over 300 million people that walked amongst the Americans, amongst the American lands. Real people. My relatives. The people that I'm descended of. Killed and slaughtered. Real Americans. I have nothing against any other people that are out there that call themselves or identify themselves or whatever they want to identify with. But my main concern right now is of the real Americans. And this is the reason why around the world you need to understand how they change the narrative, even the narrative where you're living at right now. How they change the narrative and get you fighting against each other. The governments of this world, most of the governments of this world do not care about their people whatsoever. They have a global agenda. that is to enslave, destroy, and kill most of the people that are on the planet right now. They feel as though, somebody brought you here, created you and brought you here. They feel that they can take you out anytime that they feel like it because you're no longer controllable. But I wanted to bring this Primitive Man in Ohio by Moorhead up so that you can understand who the real Americans are. And why it's so important for all these other educational channels that are actually trying to show you that you're an American, a real American, not from anywhere else on the planet, but a descendant of the people who were developed here. Your characteristics, your bloodline, who you are as a real American, not an African American, Black American, whatever, has been here for longer than antiquity. If you go by the Sumerian text, we were most likely here more than 1,000,000 years. Because my belief is that we were here before they even got into the planet, which in their text seemed to be 450,000 years ago, at best maybe 850,000 years ago. Yes, some Muslim scholars that wrote books, Message to the Black Man, saying that they were here for tens of millions of years. I mean, you can take that for whatever it's worth. But what I'm saying to you right now is that the so-called black people of the Americas, from the tips of the Northern Territories and Alaska all the way down to the shores of Peru into Antarctica, are waking up and understanding who they are. If they put an afro in front of your heritage, then you are an American. Get it straight and let us stand up together, because we have to move forward and have a right of return to our own lands, not the people they planted here and try to take your place. And you're hearing this again on Dark Matter Radio with your host, Ronnie McLean, and we are glad to be bringing this kind of situational awareness to you, because it's very important for us to be able to have this type of awareness in order for us to move forward in the whole entire world. Very, very important. Because if we don't have this kind of awareness, there's no way for us to really begin to start understanding who anyone is. So, download the show. If you're hearing this on YouTube, please give a like. We do really, really do appreciate you standing by, and soon we'll have Dr. Fatima on, and she'll be talking about DNA, and that'll be this weekend. Cruise through our past list. We have, well over 250 shows that have been heard over worldwide. And this show, again, is another show for the world to have an understanding who the real Americans are. And that is the misclassified so-called black people, Negroes, African Americans of the Americas. I thank you. And I do appreciate everything that you guys have done by supporting Dark Matter Radio. I do appreciate it. We're living in a world now where so many things have got us all twisted up. But it's great to understand that we live in a world now where we can actually talk about the truth, who we are as beings of people, and be wonderful at it. Have a great night. This is Ronnie McLean for Dark Matter Radio. Thank you for listening. Take care.